Another announcement. We are so excited to share this. We've just been growing, and especially for every one adult in this room, y'all have like 5 children back there. And so our kids' rooms are just exploding, and it's been really beautiful. So we're going to 2 services. We are going to 2 services. Brace yourself, get ready. Back to 2 services, which is what we used to do well, we were 3 services pre-pandemic. So, but starting in November, okay? So you got a couple weeks. We will be back at 9 and 11:30. You ready? All right, pick which service, figure out what you're gonna do. But we're super excited about it. More details to come. We'll only be doing youth at the 11:30. But we are excited. We'll have children's ministry in both services. It's gonna be great. So wanted just to give you a little heads up. I know for a while many of you will be rolling in at 10 a.m. like mid-service, like, wait, what? But just, get ready because that's coming down the pike. All right. I am excited for this morning. For those of you who haven't been here in a minute, we are in the middle of a series on relationships, navigating relationships. We've been talking about dating and marriage. Soon we'll be talking about parenting and other relationships. But we have a panel this morning, which I am so excited about. And wanted to say it takes a lot of courage and vulnerability to get up here and share. For the people that we had on the dating panel, the people we have on the marriage panel, it takes a lot of courage and vulnerability. So I'm really, really, really grateful for our panelists, and I think today's going to be great. So I'm going to actually invite our panelists to join me up on the stage. Come on up. Give it up for them. All right, thanks, Jeremy. Okay, so we're gonna jump in. Now, also at the end, if you were here for our dating panel, you'll remember we are gonna take questions from the audience at the end. So get your questions ready, and we'll explain to you how to submit those in a little bit. But I'm excited to have you guys up here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Okay, so I want to just jump in. So I want each one of you couples to briefly introduce yourselves and tell us how long you've been together, married. Go for it.
I'm Connor. This is my lovely wife, Maddie. We are high school sweethearts, and we met when we were 16, and got engaged at 19, married at 20, and been married for 14 years.
Good morning, family. It is so good to be here. My name is Alex, and this is my beautiful wife and best friend, Shena. And that's why I give it up, especially for her. And we have been together for 31 years. By God's grace, seriously. You'll hear about it.
But we've been married for 26. We just celebrated our 26th wedding anniversary this week on the 27th. He had to put a ring on it, so I'm counting that as the official, yeah.
Good morning. I'm Ryan. This is my beautiful wife, Jackie. And we have been married for 17 years this year, together for 20. So, awesome. Yeah.
All right, good. Okay, well, let's jump in. So I want to start with you, Connor and Maddie. You guys have a unique story in that you got married really young, which is not something that we're seeing so much of anymore in urban environments like LA. But I would love to hear from you guys. What were some of the benefits and challenges that came with getting married young?
He said, you start with benefits.
He wants challenges?
Yeah, right. I guess so. We'll see. Let's see. It is a unique story, and we knew that from the very beginning. We knew that statistics are against us. There's a lot of things that would be challenging. But we knew the benefit was that we were brand new, and we didn't have a life yet built. And so it was a really unique and beautiful time for both of us to just say, okay, like we have a fresh slate, we have all the energy, we're bright-eyed and full of dreams, and let's do this thing together. So there was a lot of excitement. There's a lot of, not like habits we had to unlearn. But then there's the challenging side too.
We had to mature on the fly, basically. When you get married later, you do have the benefit of being able to do the work and try to mature in Christ and who you are, who you're made to be before you get married, like they were talking about on the dating panel, which was so good. And we didn't know what we didn't know. And I think the only thing that was to our benefit is we knew we didn't know what we didn't know. But we had to mature essentially on the fly and give each other a lot more space and grace and forgiveness, because we are not the same people. We are the same people at our core now, but we are not the same people. Thank God for her, because anyway, so so that's, I would say that's probably one of the challenges.
All right. Alex and Shena, so you got married at a unique time in your life. I'd love for you to share a little bit about just even when you guys got together and a little bit of your journey and, those first 10 years, what did that look like? Because you've been through a lot of different seasons together. So tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah, the first 10 years were absolutely beautiful. We had not one argument. I mean, all we did was kiss and hug and tell stories.
We made up a lot.
Right, honey? We did. We made up a whole lot. A whole lot. Honey, please share.
Wow. So when we first met, I'll go back to that, because when we met, Alex was Muslim, and I was the PK, the preacher's kid gone wild. So what a duo, right? Pretty much. And I was doing all sorts of crazy things, but I knew once I met Alex and started dating him, like, this might be a little too far for my mom. My mom was a praying mama, and she knew all of the things that I was doing, but I was like, she's really gonna lose it if I bring him home. And oddly enough, she saw something in Alex. I think God, the Holy Spirit must have spoken to her, and she saw in him what I hadn't even yet seen, is just the call of God on his life. See, we were both raised Christian. We were both, spoken over all the things that we were going to do. We were going to adopt. We were going to be missionaries. All those things we were told at a young age, but we were both running from those things. And so when we got together, I was a hot mess. He was a hot mess. It created an even bigger mess when we got married. And but when we got married, we also came back to God. So that would be the shining moment. And that was amazing, but we still were hot messes on the inside. And so that first 10 years, we had to really work on ourselves, even more so than our marriage, because I came in broken, no relationship with my bio dad, no relationship, or a really bad one with my stepfather. And so I was looking at Alex like with a side eye, like he was either going to leave me like my biological father or be abusive like my stepdad. And so I had to work through a lot of those things early in those 10 years.
That's good.
What did you work on?
What did I work on?
Yes.
I was perfect. I didn't need to work on anything. No, we got off to a rough start. And what God intended for us to have on day one, unfortunately, we didn't have until year number 10. So it is my encouragement and my advice to you to get off to a strong start. Yeah. Don't wait. Don't wait until, you get tired of making up and eating out, I mean, for us, seriously, when we first met, it was a physical attraction in many ways. So I remember the first 2 years of our relationship being marked by fun times, right? We're just doing all the things. We're going out, we're making out constantly, we are having sex. Can we talk about that today, Pastor Jan? Is that okay?
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, we were having a lot of sex. I feel like every time, she said it was okay. I can talk about this. I feel like every time we would get together, we would have sex until one day, or go out to eat, until one day I wasn't, hungry or wanting to have sex. And I'm like, who are you? Who am I? Like, just needing to start over. That was very, very painful, and I definitely advise against that. Thank you for letting me share.
Oh my goodness, so good. Okay, Ryan and Jackie, I love your guys' story. You know, I think it brings a unique perspective as you both married outside of your culture. You know, Jackie, you're first generation Vietnamese immigrant and moved to the South, and you guys found each other. And I would love to hear how was that dynamic? How have you guys managed, you know, diving into marriage, a multicultural marriage, and how have you guys been able to work through a lot of those cultural differences? You were raised very differently. You had different values. How have you guys been able to navigate that?
I mean, I can tell you about my Vietnamese American experience, but it'd probably be better coming from her.
That would be me. I am your Vietnamese American experience. So, like Jen said, I'm first generation Vietnamese here. We actually didn't realize until last night that he's the first one in his family to also marry out of his race. So go us. Look at us. Look at us. So yeah, growing up in my family, not only did we speak a totally different language, but we had rules. Our rules were you become a doctor and a lawyer, and sorry, mom and dad, and you marry inside of our race. They had a fear of just us losing our culture, so they wanted us to all marry a Vietnamese person, and none of us did. And that was the such a process of my parents just meeting Ryan for the first time, and he was so loving and so open and so just he had open arms to our culture, and he didn't shy away from it. He was open to all of it. And so that ministered a lot to my parents, that not only can they open themselves up to a different culture, but also open themselves up to God himself. And it just was, it was beautiful for our family to, growing up, to watch that. And then also just growing up in a culture, American culture, Asian culture. I did not grow up in American culture, sorry. My parents showed love in different ways because this is how they were raised and our culture was raised. And so their love was to provide for their children. There was no physical affection at home. There was no I love yous at home ever. And that was a huge gaping hole for us as children. We were missing that. We needed that so much. So even just going into parenting and just going in our lives together, we had to just change that. We had to change that about just everything that I was raised in. I decided, I was like, I'm gonna shower my kids with love. I'm gonna love them till they don't want to be loved by me anymore. I'm just gonna smother them with my kisses. And I can't help myself. And we just have really gone into our journey going, well, what is it from your culture and what is it from my culture that we can combine and make our culture, our own culture at home? And that's been such a beautiful journey for both of us. Even just coming from the South, just the Southern American culture is so different. It's so different from just LA culture in itself. But we've just had to make our own story. We moved here. The first place we lived was had a huge Asian population. It was healing for me because I've been the minority all my life. So it meant so much for my kids to grow up in a place where people looked like them, where there were even mixed kids just like them. And that my husband, the fact that he was so open to it and so loving and so just ready to take it on, it meant a lot to us. It meant a lot to us, so yeah.
You want to hear from my side? No, I just want to say quickly about this that, Jackie, when she got saved, I think the story that she shares with me is when things really changed for her. culturally, we all come from, even in our home life, we can have a culture, about just our family. But from what she says, that is what really changed things for her when she gave her life to Jesus and started going to church and just receiving God's love. And that's when she, for the first time, started hugging her parents, telling them she loved them. And, I think about it like for both of us, it was really God in our lives that brought us together and caused us not to see like any racial, issues between us, or to accept each other's culture and backgrounds. And, she has stories about going to meet my family, all my extended family in Mississippi on this huge farm, and this 75 white people, and it's different, right? It's really different from what she was raised in. She's like, oh my gosh, these are backwoods country people, right? They're talking about going and shooting deer and, hunting armadillo and, all these things. It's different, right? So, but I think all of the differences were kind of just laid aside because of our relationship with God. And that's what brought us together. I think a lot of those differences just didn't matter because we were really just loving each other for who we were and wanting to experience each other's background and culture. And so we were able to come together in a lot of that. Instead of it being a big deal, we wanted to honor each other's background and each other's culture. I mean, I remember when my grandmother, who was kind of the backbone of my whole family on my mom's side, that was the big family, when she was literally passing away, Jackie and I left vacation a year after we were married and drove 5 or 6 hours, and she was right there by her bedside. And just to see her embrace all of that just was amazing. But it was really God that did all of that in us and was able to help us see those things. So
That's great. I love that. Okay, the next two questions I want to get through quickly because we got some good stuff to get to. So not everybody has to answer this, but I want to just throw these out to the group, okay? How do you guys make big life decisions together? You guys have all made, everybody up here, from career changes to moving states or, just major life decisions. How do you guys do that together? You're all really different people. Somebody want to popcorn a couple ways that works in your marriage? How do you get to a place of agreement?
Okay, a couple of things that has really helped us, and this was advice from my parents talking with me a lot as a kid, and they said you never move forward if you're not in unity, period. So sometimes that has been painstakingly a long process, and we also give each other a lot of space where we come together to process and pray, and then we give each other individual time, because some of those things, we both are different processors, and so I need time just to kind of think and pray and come back to the table. Time is really beneficial to your marriage, just to let things breathe, and especially when you're coming to big decisions. And then the third thing I think that has really helped us is bringing in wise counsel. We do not make big decisions on our own. So we ask those inner circle people that we know and trust and love and know that they are on our team, and we ask them and say, check our blind spots, please. What are we not seeing? What are we not talking about together? What are you seeing in him? What are you seeing in me? What are you seeing for the kids? So that is usually how we make decisions together.
Yeah, I make all the decisions at home, and whatever I say basically goes. That is so the opposite in our home. She's the boss. No, she's not. We're both bosses, right?
He has to ask.
It's actually a bit of a problem because we both have dominant personalities in certain areas. So how do we make decisions together? We make them together. We make them in unity because we realize that where there is unity, God commands a blessing. I don't know about you, but I want God's blessing in my life. Do we always agree? No, we don't. And when we don't agree, what do? We step away for just a moment. We spend time with God. We spend time with people that love us, that are further along than we are. And then we come together. And then we say, hey, I'm the boss, right? And she does what I ask her to do. That's pretty much how it works.
Let me clean this up. One of the things I love about Alex, I love so many things about you, honey. Alex has said for many years that he trusts the Holy Spirit in me. And so if maybe I'm in a decision we're making, maybe I'm hearing God clearer than he is, then he will trust that I've heard from the Holy Spirit and vice versa. So I feel like that's one of the biggest things that we do when we're trying to figure out what to do next. Yeah.
That's it.
Ryan and Jackie?
A rule that we made for ourselves, for our own family, is for big decisions, we both want to hear from the Lord individually. And then we come together because it saved us a lot of heartbreak later on to where when we moved 2,000 miles from Alabama here. We both heard from the Lord at separate times. I'm talking years apart. So, but we were not going to make a move until both of us heard from him individually. And that saved us a lot of heartbreak later because when we're in bed in California and things are tough and our finances aren't coming in and we don't know how we're going to make it and eat the next week, I can't wake him up and go, you put us here. It's your fault. No, we put us here. We both heard from the Lord. So that's been a big rule in our family that we're like, any big decisions, we're like, you know what? I trust that you can hear from the Lord. You trust that I can hear from the Lord. And we trust that we can hear from him individually. And he's not going to speak something to you. He brought us together as one. He's not going to speak something to you and say, do this, make this huge decision and keep it from me. He's going to bring me in on this. And so that's a huge rule that's really kept us safe and protected from blaming one another. So, yeah.
But what about when you guys disagree? So how do you fight fair? What are some things you've learned about how to handle disagreements, or pain? Because there's always pain in relationships. There's always disappointment, disagreements. How do you manage that? Who wants to give us some insight?
Whoever has the best comeback wins. That's how you decide. That's it. No, I'm kidding. So, I think in marriage, you can fight over the dumbest things, or you can fight over very important things. Our first fight was over where a chair was going to go in the living room. And I still remember to this day, and we laughed after it, but I know we fought about it for like 30 minutes. I don't remember who won. Who decided where the chair was going to go? She won. Okay. So, but yeah, so I think, again, what Jackie just referred to in prayer, when we have disagreements, is talking it out and saying, because, again, how you do things comes from who you are, how you were raised, right? We're both raised completely different. And so I think coming together and really communicating and talking about it and being open to doing things not just your way, but to come together and find a good middle ground and say, how can we do this together? So I think a lot of times it can be easy to come into a conversation and go, my way's right and your way's wrong, And whenever you do that, then you're just going to butt heads. So I think coming together, talking about it, communicating openly, and then really going and praying about it and making sure your heart's in the right place. Because sometimes I find myself, my heart can be too into something, or I really want to do something a certain way. And then after we have a conversation, I realize, oh man, I'm too wrapped up in this. I need to step back. What's it about? Is it about for our family and our kids and getting perspective? And I think talking about that with one another and really just having good communication, I think, is the biggest part.
I think if it's something small, too, give your spouse the win. I mean, if it's where are we going to eat? And, I want Mexican, he wants Thai. It's Thai this time, right? If it's something big, one of the things Alex and I decided after those first few years of it being really, really hard was we were going to take, no matter how bad an argument or whatever it was, we were going to take divorce off the table. We would never say it. We would never think it. That's a non-negotiable, because if you allow yourself to think it, it's probably going to lead you towards that. And so even when we're disagreeing, that was a no-no to even think that it's that bad that we would have to go there. We would remind ourselves, same team, a lot. Because when you're arguing, it doesn't feel like you're on the same team, but we are, because the Bible says we're one. It's messy getting to one. We're 31 years in, we're still getting to one, y'all. But same team.
That's helped us a lot, too. We were just talking about that the other day, that we are on the same team. If we visualize me and him and we're fighting this way, sometimes we'll be like, come around. Like, together, side by side, we're looking at this thing. And a couple practicals that have really helped us is like a bedtime cutoff point. If it's like past 8 o'clock, we're not getting anywhere good. For me, anyway. I'm like, I'm done at 8 o'clock at night. So we tend to have a lot of our arguments at the nighttime because we're tired. And you probably have heard that acronym HALT. If you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, stop. And that has been really helpful for us because most of the time we're not talking about what we're talking about. So Conor's really good about being like, what are we arguing about right now? And it's true, like we kind of just get wrapped up and we try to bring other things in. And so getting down to the root of what we're talking about. And we also, and for those of you that know us, this won't come as a surprise. We try to schedule our arguments as best we can. I know. I'm vulnerable right now, okay? But it's helpful because especially the big ones, we put a pin in it. Like, this is not getting anywhere fast. We need time to really think through this and to really make sure that we're coming with a clear objective. And that's been helpful for us to not bring additional things into the thing we're actually arguing about right now because things just get in there. You know, then we bring up yesterday and then you brought up the time with your mother-in-law and you brought up the time and it's like, whoa. So helping us stay focused. So we'll talk about, like, with our, again, not surprising for me. I'm like, what's the agenda for this conversation right now? But it's been helpful. It's been really helpful because it's been like, okay, we are going to talk about specifically our monthly budget today. And that's the only thing we're going to talk about today or in this moment, and just stay focused has really, really helped us.
So good.
It's really good.
As far as like disagreement, one of the things that really impacted me was understanding that there's like objective truth, but when it comes to arguments, you both are operating out of a subjective truth. Yeah. So her reality is what she's perceiving, and my reality is what I'm perceiving in that moment. And it is, bad things happen when we react and then do something not healthy or not right. Yeah. But spending time arguing over her reality and saying, no, you need to see it how I see it, was one of the most liberating things because I'm an Enneagram, I'm a 1-9, and so I'm like, no, this is the truth. This is fully accurate, and you're just misperceiving it. At least that's how I used to be. And
How'd that work for you?
listen, yeah. So understanding that is true, and that will always be true. So then now I need to understand her reality. So instead of taking time to convince her of my reality, I'm entering her world and saying, okay, how do you see this thing? And then I often finally get understanding or whatever, and then we're able to bridge the gap and get to what we're really talking about.
Yeah. That's good. Pastor Alex, I know something you mentioned to me. Let me sit up. Is how important, like, living in honesty, not having a habit of hiding, like, is, in marriage, and especially in how they create division. You want to share about that briefly?
Yeah, thank you. 100%. Tell the truth always.
Nicely.
Always tell the truth. Yeah, let me say that again. Tell the truth always. Always tell the truth. Have I always done it? No. Do I always do it? No. But really, if you and I are if we're going after God's best, we have to approach every challenge with honesty. So Shena and I met when we were very young, and there were a number of things that I had not yet disclosed to her. Why? Because I was embarrassed. Because I was ashamed of decisions that I had made. But when I took the time to share with her, you know what I found? just unconditional love, care, and acceptance. And so I've learned over the years to just be honest and not hide, not live in shame. And yeah, just bring it out, man. Talk about it, and have safe people that you can process with, because some of these things are hard, right? Many of us have made some bad choices, bad decisions. But let's not stay in that place. Let's be honest. Let's be honest before the Lord. I mean, after all, He knows, right? He knows what we're up to. And let's not suffer in silence. And I mean, this woman loves me. And I know that whatever it is that is going on with me, she's going to be there to listen and love and support me. So tell the truth always tell the truth. Yeah.
It's so good. It's so good. Okay, let's talk about communication. We all know, we've all heard it a million times, communication is vital in, good communication is vital in a healthy marriage. Maddie and Conor, how's that worked for you guys? What does good, healthy communication look like? What are some things you try to do in your marriage with that?
This is honestly where if you're going through marriage difficulties, what you can start today, right after church, is your communication. There are some things that take a longer process of unpacking. So this is going to be hopefully the most practical. For me, the most practical thing was recapping. If I misunderstood, I would try to repeat back, like, okay, so this hurt you, so I'm hearing you say, and then I try to recap what I heard. And sometimes I'm right on point, and I do understand it. And a lot of times, and especially early on, I was off. And then I would give her space to say, no, that's not what I meant. I was trying to say, or when you said this, it hurt me this way. So recapping towards the end, I think that's a communication tool that I use that.
Yeah, for us, I think basics are everything. You never grow out of the basics. So for us, we try really hard to make sure that we're saying please and thank you. Like manners with the most important person in your life is really important. He takes the trash out every Thursday. I don't need to say thank you, but it's important to me that I say thank you so much for doing that because it really shows that we're seeing one another. And also for me as a woman, I have been in many rooms with women who the conversation turns to let's bash our husbands, and that's the honest truth. And for me, I have made a decision from the very beginning that is so important. What you say carries the power of life and death, and what you say about your husband to his face and behind his back radically impacts your marriage. So it is something that I think is so important and not talked about enough, that we're honest, of course. Like as women, we need to get together and be like, help me. But if the objective is to help me and speak wisdom into my life and encouragement because I'm struggling and he's frustrating me about this, like that's different. But you know the difference. It's really when you're just starting to become dishonoring of him, and it changes my brain about him when I get home. And I also think it's really important, something that's been helpful for us is deciding which kind of communications we're doing in front of our kids and which ones we're not. The home is the place where kids learn how to have healthy conflict resolution. So if every single argument and intense conversation is behind closed doors, how are they going to learn? So it's about protecting them, of course, as well. But I think we have sometimes been like, no, let's stay right here. Like we have a little, like, I don't know, it looks like a tick. We're like, all right. We're just going to stay right here. Like we're on the same page, right? Like we're going to stay right here in the kitchen and work this out because we have 3 kids, ages 9, 7, and 6. And so they're listening and they're paying attention, and that has been hugely helpful because it keeps us in check. We're like, okay, little ears are watching and listening. But also it just ensures that we as a family are working through these things together.
That's really good. Alex and Shena, would you guys add anything to that in terms of what have you learned with communication? What's been helpful?
I have learned, and I'm still learning. It's not just what you say, but how you say it. Because Alex will talk to me about my tone sometimes, or I don't even have to say anything. I can just, ladies, we can throw that look like you roll the eyes, and that's not communicating love. That's not communicating respect. So it's both what you say and how you say it. And the longer you're with someone, the communication style may have to change a bit and adjust. Like what was working in year 10 is probably not working in year 25. So constantly checking in with each other, like, okay, how best can I communicate that I love you in this season, Alex? Is it still acts of service? Is it still words of affirmation? It's probably all 5 now in our old age, just like it's all the things. Yeah, I would add that. Yeah.
That's good. Jackie and Ryan, how about for you guys?
We try really hard at the root of everything to remind ourselves that we came from different cultures, different families. We were disciplined in totally different ways. So our desires and the way we go about things are always rooted in something. That may come from family culture. It may come out of the healing that we've walked out, but they didn't walk the same journey. So we try to be very clear about what we desire and what we need in that moment. In every conversation, we've learned that we need something different. There are times that we'll have to stop ourselves in the conversation and go, okay, wait, are you wanting me to help you fix this? Or are you wanting me to synchronize with you? Are you wanting me to listen? Are you wanting me to cheer you on? Because then there's that tension and frustration when they're not meeting that need. And that's not their fault, really. It's because we're not clear about our needs. And that's what we've learned, and we really try to bring that into a lot of the conversations that we have.
It's really good. Okay, I want to transition this conversation a little bit. Something we all spent a lot of time talking about is the idea of intimacy and in marriage really growing towards what does it mean to be one flesh, emotional intimacy, intimacy over time, intimacy, how it looks different in different seasons, physical intimacy. And so I want to start with this beautiful quote that Maddie and Conor shared with me from the late and amazing Tim Keller. Pastor Tim Keller says, "To be loved but not known is comforting but superficial. To be known and not loved is our greatest fear. But to be fully known and truly loved is, well, a lot like being loved by God. It's what we need more than anything." So good. So I want to start with Maddie and Conor. You guys love this quote and, share a lot about being passionate about, being students of each other and really committing to building intimacy in your marriage. And I would love for you guys to share, what does that look like?
For me, it kind of started with setting the tone and making sure Maddie feels safe and creating that space. As far as our sexual intimacy, we talked about it. We didn't finish and then just not talk about it. So we established on this front. We would say, "How was it? Did you like this?" And then that allows the guy to ask, set the tone to say, did that feel good? And she can say, "No, that didn't. That hurt." Or maybe she has a past you don't know about because you're still learning each other's backgrounds. And maybe she says, "I don't like this when we do this." So I would say communication, what we just came out of, then helps us get into the intimacy.
To add to that, this has been a great exercise for us. I highly recommend everybody goes home and kind of thinks through these questions because it's been good for us to kind of recap. And for us, I thought, proximity does not mean intimacy. So I could answer a quiz about Conor's factual history, but to know him, to know his heart on a deep, deep level requires consistent work. And it's like in nature. There's no such place as stagnation. You're either disintegrating or you are integrating and growing. And so you have to just stay so vigilant and make sure that we have to work so hard. And we put a lot of those kind of guardrails in place. We fight like heck for date nights as best we can, even if they're home. And staying students of one another we've talked about that a lot as young as we were. being students and studying each other has been the main key to our success so far. Is just we have a PDF that his cousin actually sent us. It's called 1001 Questions, and we take it everywhere we go. We've shared it with lots of you, and we just ask each other questions all the time, and being really good and focusing on being professional question askers of one another, because there's so much about him I still don't know, because he's changing and he's growing, and I hope that for him. So I need to keep up with his change and growth by asking him questions.
And you guys also, one thing I love about you guys is you guys like to do new things together, right? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's kind of the combination of doing some of the deep stuff and still having fun. Like, if you're not having fun, we're doing something not quite right. And there are definitely seasons where it's not fun, but in general. And studies have shown, like, when you do something new that neither of you have ever done before, different hormones, they are released, and it bonds you more. So literally doing a Groupon, and we had never been axe throwing. So we did axe throwing, and you know what? It was fun, and those kinds of things, remembering to laugh with each other, finding stand-up things that are funny, because the world's so heavy and there's so many things, and if all we talk about is the heavy, deep work all the time, at some point, how are we enjoying it, So having fun also actually then helps us, so when we do get deep, we're way more synchronized. Yeah.
And you guys are also, very much always reading a new book, always invite. I love that about you. I love that you guys take that very seriously. Actually, tell us about the book you were telling me about, because it was a great resource.
I have it in my notes. Hold on. I know, surprise. Okay, so I wanted a good synopsis of it. Okay, we've shared it with a lot of you, but we're reading a book right now called How We Love, and it is rocking our world. And the premise is this, that explains why the ways you and your spouse relate to each other go back to before you even met. It explores attachment theory, your childhood, created an intimacy imprint that affects your marriage today, and it sets you on a new growth track. So that has been so helpful for us, because we're just in we try to read a book. We're always reading. But I think, again, it's that student mindset of like, okay, what else can we learn? And we wouldn't have been ready for this book when we were newly married, to be honest with you. And now we're going a lot deeper into how we were designed, similar to what you were saying, Jackie. Like, what were those imprints from childhood that we learned about intimacy, about relating? And it gives you so much empathy. Empathy is one of the most powerful things in marriage, because you're like, I'm getting revelation of him as a kid, and I'm thinking, that's where you're reacting out of. This isn't you against me. You are reacting out of an imprint that's deep within you. And so it helps us just work on, just establishing intimacy and through empathy.
That's really good. Now, I know this, growing in emotional and physical intimacy, something you said to fight really hard for in your marriage. And not as a surprise, most people have to fight really hard for in their marriage. Will you share a little bit about your guys' journey and how you've got to this place?
Yeah, so when I was 7 years old, I was exposed to pornography, like a lot of people maybe here have seen. And that does something to you. And I didn't know what it was and all that stuff, but then from seeing that at such a young age, it became a part of my journey, became a part of my story, whether I wanted it or not. And, it was something that was off and on I knew was not right, because I was raised in a Christian household, so it wasn't like this is something I went all in on. It was something that I was like, no, I know this is not right, but my flesh says I want it still. And basically, side note, if any of you do struggle with this, it won't go away just because you're married and you're having more sex. It just won't. So get rid of that lie as quickly as you can. I thought that was the case. I thought, okay, this is a struggle. We're going to get married, and it won't be a struggle anymore. And that's just not how it works. So years in, it kind of was dormant. And when it came back, I went to a counselor. And this counselor, he said to me, Conor, people who struggle with this, it's essentially an emotional intimacy disorder. And so that kind of rocked my world, because my whole life I had been taught that it was simply a lust issue, And lust is a part of it. It definitely is. So I will never diminish that. But I learned that basically there were parts of me that I didn't like or that hurt. And I wanted to disassociate. We all have that, whether it's in little ways or big ways. And through God basically revealed this to me. And I learned a couple things through this journey of unpacking this. I learned first that God loves me so much that he's going to deal with this. That basically, and in the medical world, if you get in a car crash or if you have some sort of accident, you have a big wound, and let's say you have like pebbles and stuff from where you fell in your wound, they do a process where they have to remove all the debris in order for it to heal so that there's nothing in there that can infect it. And I feel like sometimes culture, especially American church culture, we can, while there's still stuff in there, we sew it up real quick and then hope it goes away. And then some pus starts coming out because it's infected and we wipe it off and maybe get a tattoo over it. And we try to do all these things, but deal with the actual issue. And God loves you so much. He, one of his names is he's the great physician. He is a healer and he is a counselor. And he said, Conor, we're going to open this wound up and we're going to remove everything. And that hurt so bad. But the paradox and the depth of that love is that he loves you too much to let that pain stop from doing the operation. And sometimes doing the work is just staying on the operating table, staying on that table and not getting off and saying, God, take all of it out. And if we ever stop short of removing everything, you're in for a world of trouble. If not now, later. And then I learned a couple of things about sin. At least, first in this process, I learned about my identity in Christ and who I am. And he says, what's the verse? He says, here it is. For the Lord disciplines the one he loves and chastises every son or daughter whom he receives. It is for discipline that you have to endure. God is treating you as a child. For what child is there whom his father does not discipline? For they disciplined us for a short time as it seemed best to them. But he disciplines us for our good, that we may share his holiness. So that's the beginning of the work, is understanding that it is because he loves you. If you ever see anyone struggling with an issue and they're successfully hiding it, that is a tragedy. The second thing I learned was that God is a God of process and healing. And he wants you to go through the process. But you have to submit to his process and surrender to his process. And I wish I could tell you it's going to be 6 months to a year. It could be a month for someone. It could be 20 years for someone else. I don't know how long that process is. But then the last thing that gave me revelation for our marriage was I learned that sin is unoriginal in the sense that something good has to exist first to then be spoiled. C.S. Lewis said, what is it? Yeah, he says, goodness is, so to speak, itself. Badness is only spoiled goodness. And there must be something good first before it can be spoiled. So oftentimes for me, that pain, I thought was something that was so wrong that it's not a part of our story and it's just a distraction. But for us, it actually was the direct gateway to then building intimacy with God for myself and then building intimacy with each other. And so sometimes that awful hurt you have, I don't know what it is, all your journeys, and we all have different hurts and pasts, but that very thing you don't want to talk about, that is actually oftentimes the exact thing that he wants to get started on. And it leads to a glorious journey of actual freedom, actual liberation. And honestly, this applies to all sins. So some of you here, if you're not struggling with pornography or you're not struggling with lust, frankly, we all have a thorn in our side, and we all struggle with something. So stay on that thing, and if you do that self-work, you can then be more intimate for each other. It's not project self. It's not about just my life and me. It is, I'm doing it so that generational curses are broken. I'm doing it so that I am there for my wife. And so we had to fight for it, and we had to, she has her own experience, and there had to be a lot of grace and a lot of forgiveness. And as painful as it was, we've only actually understood the love of God now. We understood it in our head, but sometimes that journey from the head to the heart can be a lifetime.
It's so good. Maddie, I'd love to hear from you. What encouragement would you give to a spouse in the room whose spouse, because this isn't just a male issue, it could be right across the board, but whose spouse is dealing with this because it can feel so personal and painful. So you guys have both, which I love this, and I'm so grateful. Thank you, first of all, Conor, for sharing that, because we know statistically 80% of men are struggling with porn. The numbers are crazy, but it's not just a male issue. It's across the board. There's so much exposure. And it does, and if it's not porn, it's premarital sex or all these things that have oftentimes gotten in the way in our lives, and we've struggled with knowing how to do healthy, good intimacy, right? And so I love that you guys have really put in the work. But Maddie, what encouragement would you give to the spouses in the room?
Yeah, I'm proud of you. I think, one, you are not alone. You are not alone. And that is the unoriginal lie of the enemy, that he is trying to just whisper to you, it's just you. I think, speaking to your point, Alex, too, Conor came to me when we first started dating when we were in high school and said this was an issue. And so I have ridden the highs and the lows, and it has been a very, very long process that has looked at like different iterations for me. At the beginning, I was just sad for him because I knew, I'm like, that's so sad. Like, I can't believe you're exposed to that, and I'm going to fight for you. And I was really encouraging and like really praying for him, and just, and I thought, we can do this, we can do this. And then years go by, and my compassion dwindled, and I became angry, and I became thinking that, how dare you, and now I need to, you're not changing with encouragement, so I can change you with threatening you, because that always works. And I think, and it was really dark and painful, and it rides on my own insecurity. It's just how it works as a woman too. You're like, and I can't, it has to do with me. And the encouragement is, it has nothing to do with you. It doesn't. And so it's been really helpful for me to release Conor as an idol and as a dependent. And I think a lot of times as women, we can tend to do that. Either raised, he was like this dreamy guy that was running the track at 15 years old. I was like, ooh. And I thought, like, he has like all these dreams, and I'm so like, against by the book, and he's just like, he's going to move to LA someday and be an editor, which he is. And so, things like that. And I was like, I'm so excited. And then I thought, I could come alongside that. I'll come alongside your dream. And he failed me. And that's the reality. And when you see your spouse as a human, and he's allowed to fail, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to release this. And then I thought, okay, I can fix it. I'm a caregiver by nature. I'm a nurse. And I think, like, my job is like, okay, we'll diagnose it. We'll put together a plan of care, and then we'll take care of this. So that's the plan. Things go by plans. But it wasn't that way, and it was really painful. And we had a really dark spot right before we moved to LA. And I think in that journey, it reminded me that God has got to take his rightful place in my life, and to release Conor, because our goal together is to work toward holiness together. And my favorite definition of marriage I've heard, it comes from Tim Keller as well, and it is friendship on mission. And it's those two things that have held us through those years of darkness and pain, where sometimes our friendship is holding us together, because I'm like, I don't know where we're going, what we're doing. And then sometimes we're like, we are on fire, we're going after something together, but so that's keeping us together when I can't stand you right now. So, it's like those things together it has really helped us stay focused, so you are not alone. And the last thing, the time that I knew, I thought, he's told me during different iterations of it, like at the beginning we tried to do it just us. In his journey, he was like, it's me and God. I got this. I can do this. It's a willpower. You can't overcome it with willpower. It is. He went to therapy, and then we started really allowing light to come in. And that was sharing it with the people closest in our lives. And that's how I knew that my trust is actually not in him. I love him and I want what's best for him, but my trust is in God and God alone. And I knew that if we brought other people into this, that is when transformation comes, is through God shining light and truth and love into Connor's life. And when he started sharing it with people and his closest buddies and things, and I thought, oh my gosh, here we go.
So good. Okay, we don't have a lot of time left. But I want to go down this with this same topic because Jackie and Ryan, I know you guys have had to overcome some big obstacles around intimacy as well. I mean, I feel like everybody does, right? But like your unique challenge, and would you guys share a little bit about that and how you guys were able to overcome that?
So, yeah, and I love some of the things you guys share. Connor, Maddie, thank you guys for sharing. That was so good. Yeah, I think, we all come into marriage having different experiences before, whether it's little, none, a lot. And I think a lot of those expectations or things that we come out of can really play into your intimacy with what you expect from your partner. And I love, Jackie, what she has always done really well is communicating, like asking questions, being open, talking about expectations when I really probably wouldn't have shared some of that stuff. And so when we came into marriage, so we came from completely different backgrounds. Again, growing up, both believers, but I didn't date at all. I had no committed girlfriends, really. I think I dated a girl for like a month, and I felt like I was trapped, and it took me 4 weeks to get out of that, and that was it. It was like the worst. I realized in those 4 weeks, I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. And so I was like, I think we need to see other people. That was my out. And, so at least I got out, before a long time or something. So, but, she had different experiences. So she dated lots of different people. So coming into marriage, I am older than her. So, when we got married, I think, obviously intimacy is something that everybody looks forward to when you get married. And I actually had never been with anybody. So coming into marriage, my thought about it was, we will just learn and do this together, right? Which I thought was good. I was like, yeah, that's great. We're going to go into this together. But until we got married, I didn't realize there were things that were going to come up till after the fact, because I had never done this before. So going into marriage, I remember so when we got married, I was in retail, but I had been doing ministry for like 10 years already. And my relationship with God was like high priority for me. I remember I was talking about like, whenever we get married, I want to have like, can we just have a space where we can go and pray and read and like have some alone time, Like it was a priority for me. Because, I don't know, I love Jesus, I guess. I'm a Christian, right? So, but with that, I want to say this about some of this is, I feel like for some of us, being vulnerable it's not always easy. And I know the quote you talked about earlier about being loved and then knowing somebody and actually feeling loved and knowing them. And I feel like we always don't feel like we know if we're going to be loved when we're vulnerable. But it's okay, especially when you get married, you have that spouse, you need to be able to trust that person and be open and be vulnerable and talk to them about things. And so opening myself up and talking about things after we got married, again, just really trying to still seek God. We're doing ministry, and we did ministry together. But there came a time where I felt like for some reason that like intimacy was bringing me into separation from God. Now, because it had never been a part of my life before we got married, I had no grid for what it looked like, right? I didn't know, like, you can go have sex and then go spend time with Jesus. I was like, right? Because in our culture, especially in Christian culture, it's like sex is bad and God is good. And it's like there's no middle ground. So, but there is. Like, God created sex. God created man and woman. God created us to be together this way. And so it took me going through this experience where when we first got married, we were being intimate, but slowly over time, over the next like 6 months, and it wasn't very long, it was like we started being intimate less and less. And it left Jackie in a place where she felt very unloved. She felt like she was being rejected. And also, which I wasn't thinking about, I'm just thinking, like, I love Jesus and I'm going after Jesus. And so I'm going to do whatever it takes. And even though there was times where I felt like, oh, I want to be intimate, I felt like it was distancing me from God to be with her, which is terrible for her, right? She's like, oh my gosh, I'm pushing, like, Ryan, why don't you just be alone for the rest of your life, right? If you can't be intimate with somebody, like Jen's like, maybe you were that person, Ryan, you're supposed to be alone for the rest of your life. What are you doing? You're screwing up people's lives here, bro. But, I didn't know till it happened. And so as we walked through that together, and Jackie was like, oh my gosh, she's so great. She's so gracious. She's so kind. She would just constantly talk to me about this. And of course I was like, this is, weird. I don't want to talk about this. This is just how I feel about it. And so eventually we got to the point where, and this sounds so bad, and I feel so bad even saying it to this day, because I'm like, in our first year of marriage, you should be intimate, like pretty regular, like pretty often, I would think. I mean, I know you guys were like a lot before, but we were like,
every day.
We were struggling, man. I need some tips from Alex and Shena. Okay. So yeah, it led into the point where I was like, hey, maybe we can just be intimate like once a month, And it's like, that was devastating for her and it's not the actual act of sex. It's the fact that she felt like unwanted and unloved. Like, what did I just get myself into, And even though you can have you can have the best qualities, you can be a good guy or a good girl or a nice person, but if you feel pushed away in an area where you're supposed to feel close, that's gonna make you feel very rejected. And so we reached a point where, in our relationship, where she was literally like, she had a bag packed, and she's like, I'm gonna have to go stay with my parents because I can't be in this right now. Like, we got to separate or do something different. And I said, and that was where I was like, okay, ladies, okay, let me say, God, I will admit, I'll just say for me, I was not like the most brilliant, like, I did not see this coming, okay? I was like, guys, and they say that a lot of times, couples will come in for marriage counseling, and the woman's like, I've just given and I've given and I've given and I can't give anymore. And the guy's like, I'm totally fine. Like, what's wrong? What's going on? Right? Because women are naturally givers and guys are naturally takers. So we have to find a middle ground for some of that. Guys, you have to begin to give, and you have to begin, so there has to be like an exchange that happens there. So anyway, I come to talk to her, and she's like, and so I'm like, she's like, I'm going to go and just stay over at my parents' house. And I'm like, okay, what is it we need to do to try to work on this? I was like, oh my gosh, she's like for real serious about this. Hello. So she said, well, we got to go talk to somebody. And I said, okay, whatever we need to do, let's do it. So for the first time in 6 months, we've only been married 6 months, we went and sat down with a couple who we trusted to start talking about some things and what was going on. And they are this super sweet couple, been married for a long time, and they just went through some scripture with us. And the Bible's it, right? It's got so much good instruction in it. And it just simply said this, that my body's not mine and her body's not hers. And we are to give ourselves to one another unless, and this specific thing, unless for consent a time that you're going to separate so that you don't fail, right? Unless you're going to abstain for a certain amount of time for prayer and fasting and all that, you're supposed to be able to give yourself to one another. And I was like, oh, shoot. I was like, I'm supposed to be this like being a Christian and I love Jesus and I'm not even doing what the Bible says. And I remember the point we came home to our apartment and I was just praying about it. And I'm just thinking about this verse that she had shared with me. And I was just like, you know what? And I think this is it for a lot of things when it comes to relationship is I decided, I was like, the Word of God is truth. And it trumps whatever I feel. So what am I going to live out of? How I feel or what the Bible says?
That's good.
And I made a decision. I was like, no matter how I feel, this is what God says, and this is what I have to live by. And so I made a decision, like, I'm not going to go by those feelings anymore. And so what that did was, because we all kind of create these filters of how life works and how relationship and things work. And so when I began to change that mindset, then I began to open myself up. Jackie and I became more intimate. I'm like, literally like within a month, everything changed. You know, we were being intimate consistently. And not only that, but I'll say this, Jackie has been a huge, and Jen said it in her teaching, that your spouse is like a mirror to show you things you can't see. She has been a huge, I'm trying to get too emotional. Sorry. Because now, you know, I was raised in church. Nobody forced anything on me, but as you begin to walk with God and know God, you can kind of develop the idea that if it's just me and Jesus, that's all I need. But truly and honestly, I mean, if you're going to stay single for the rest of your life, then yeah, that's fine. You still need some community though. But I would not be the person I am today without her in my life. The things that she has shown me and how she has lived and the reflection that she has been able to, mirror for me has been life-changing. And so not only did it benefit our marriage, but it actually benefited my relationship with Jesus. Because now I was able to go in my relationship with God and go, if something's off, it has nothing to do with her. It has something else to do with myself. So it began to point me in the right direction for how I needed to keep changing to become more like God.
That's so good. And I'm so grateful you shared this because, you know, I think that, you know, like we just said, there's a lot of different things we bring. We don't even realize we have some religious mindsets, some, you know, people talking about how purity culture has screwed them up in this area of their life or whatever. But I think getting a healthy, you know, free, getting healthy and free. We all come with baggage. Getting healthy and free in this area is really, really huge. Okay, two things. I want to throw up on the screen because we want to start grabbing your questions. We have a QR code. If you have questions, I want to grab those. Any questions you want to submit, we have a couple minutes. We're going to answer questions. But while you guys are doing that, Alex and Shena, now this is one of the things I'm so grateful for and watching you guys, is you guys have hung on to each other through so many really, really difficult things that would tank most couples, right? So death in family, major struggles, your son walking through a major cancer journey. I mean, there's so many things you guys have had to deal with. How have you guys, through all the difficulties, hung on to each other? Get your questions in and listen at the same time. You don't want to miss this.
Listen, I am big when it comes to telling stories, but I really, this is such an important question that I want my wife to address it because she brings accuracy. And I bring storytelling, so we only have enough time for... No. But I do want to get in just real quick, 30 seconds on the intimacy part. How do you fight for intimacy? You know what? You get a room sometimes. I mean it. I'm serious. Like you fight. You know, you fight for just to eliminate distractions and anything and responsibilities as well. We have kids, and we have a dog, and we love them all, but they're a big responsibility. And in order for us to have time alone, we got to get away. God has blessed us with this beautiful house, but we need to get away to spend some time, intentional time, with each other. Now on to Pastor Jen's question.
So yeah, it's been a hard, I would say, season, but how long are seasons? Like, it's been a minute. Especially when our son Caleb was diagnosed with stage 4 bone cancer in 2019. That's probably been one of the hardest things for me personally and for our marriage and our family. But I think it would have been harder had Alex and I not linked arms and we drew closer, not further apart. I think a lot of times the enemy brings things like sickness and cancer, all the things, so that we can distance ourselves from our spouse or our families or people who care about us, because he knows if he can isolate us, then we'll stop trusting what God says about the situation. And so for us, we leaned in pretty early on to each other, and that's by the grace of God that we've been able to get through and to see Caleb, the healed one, healed today. And so I can't even imagine going through what we've been through. That's just one of the things that, Jen, you mentioned. My brother just had a stroke recently. I lost, a couple years ago, a cousin who was like a sister to me. While we're going through the stuff with our son, we just lost a dear friend yesterday. So it just keeps coming, but we keep coming back to each other, and we keep coming back to God, because he's the one that gives us the strength. There's no way we would be standing here. I mean, our family and our marriage is a testimony of God and his goodness and his faithfulness. But you have to fight. You have to fight to stay together. You have to fight to silence the enemy, because, like I said, he brings these things to tear. He hates marriage. If you're married out there, he hates your marriage. So don't think that he doesn't. He does. But God is greater. God is bigger. And so we've just leaned into each other. We've leaned into God, and by his grace, we've been able to not just get through, but to be victorious in each of those situations.
It's good. Okay, hopefully your questions are in. They're going to be bringing them up here in just a second. So while they do that, 2 weeks ago, Dr. Ryan was here, and he said, marriage has a marketing problem. So my question to you guys is, quickly, because we have a lot of questions to answer, is it worth it? Go. Is it worth it? Is marriage worth it? It's hard. Is it worth it?
Is it worth it? 110%. Listen to me. Being married to this amazing woman is by far the best thing that's happened to me. I am telling you, she is God's best. She makes me better and stronger. We grow together. We mess up together. You know what I mean? We go into hard things together. But not only do we do things together, we do things within community. How have we been able to weather so many difficult storms? Through the collective power that exists when you belong to the family of faith. So you and I belong to the family of faith, and we shouldn't suffer alone, right? So it is 110% worth it. I would do it every day. It's truly a gift that has come straight from the heart of God. So I recommend it, but I also recommend that you get ready for it, because it's not something that you stumble into. It is something that you have got to take seriously, because it really is a gift from God. So you have to prepare for that gift.
Yeah, it's absolutely worth it. Listen, I don't know how many of you are local or native to here, but a lot of us move here with dreams. And when it comes to the film industry, when it comes to maybe some fitness goals, so many other areas of life, if I say, hey, not everyone makes it. Some of you, and in fact, if you're still here after several years, that kind of lights a fire under you to be like, but not me. Because it's worth it. anything that has value in life takes effort. And we've just got to really understand that effort is okay. And sometimes that effort is hard because of seasons and losses, but that's the marketing problem, I think, is anything that has value takes effort.
And we had said, if it depends on what your definition and your goal in marriage is. If it's mutual self-fulfillment, it's not worth it. Because you're not going to get there. I think if the goal is to learn how to love somebody like God loves us, and to be unified friendship on mission, and to advance His kingdom together, then it's totally worth it.
Absolutely, 100% worth it. I feel like every part of marriage, whether it be parenting, intimacy, having your relationship with your husband or your spouse, it's revealing an aspect of who God is. Being parents reveals the aspect of who He is as Father to us. Being intimate, it reveals that part of Him who's always pursuing us. Right? And then for my husband, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's like, that is revealing the aspect of him as Christ loving the church. There's so much beauty in that. And I just encourage marriage, like, go for it. You don't have to take the girl home late anymore. You get to sleep next to her and wake up next to her, guys. Like, I get to wake up next to this stud, okay? Like, it's so worth it. Do not drag your feet. Go for it. And you don't have to be perfect. There are things that you can journey together and defeat together as well. And so as long as you're like journeying into healing, go for it. Go for it. Yeah.
I would also add a practical thing. 2 incomes are better than 1.
Yeah.
Can I get an amen out there about that? And then just spiritually speaking, our marriage is our ministry. We've been able to minister to people we wouldn't have been able to apart. And so I would say 100% marriage is worth it.
That's so good. Okay, we're going to answer these quickly. Y'all ready? This is the speed round. Speed round. All right. What is one thing you wish you knew about marriage when you were single? One thing, something you wish you would have known about marriage when you were still single. Y'all, speed round. Speed.
Okay. So one thing I want to say real quick is after you get married, big life changes do change your relationship with your spouse. When you have kids, major change to your relationship. It still works. It can still be really good, but it will change the dynamic that's in your home and in your family. I don't want to go on the negative side of it. Because after I got set free and I was like, I'm ready to have sex every day, it was like, oh, let's have kids. And it was like, dang, this kid's in my way now. So, how does this work? But no, you have to work through those things as you go through life. So enjoy your time together after you get married. Enjoy that season without kids. Enjoy the season with kids. Enjoy every season and make it work as you go along, because those big life changes, again, you have to communicate with your spouse. Don't expect them to be the same when those big changes come.
That's good. How do you deal with each other's insecurities?
For me, the subjective reality concept of like, if she has an insecurity that comes up, and oftentimes you discover an insecurity, like, so it's not like I knew it without having ever experienced it. At some point, I might have hit on it, and seeking understanding, I think, is huge. Instead of trying to convince her of my subjective reality, trying to understand her subjective reality, and that speaks into.
You always say this, which is really good. It's emotions are never wrong. So when he's saying, I'm feeling embarrassed, I can't argue that he shouldn't be embarrassed. So I think it's validating one another's feelings. Like, the feeling is true. And yet, what do we do with that? And also being just very honest with each other about what is insecure, and opening ourselves up to that has been really helpful, because to your point, like, it's a stumbling block we come across, and be like, I want to let you know these are the things that I'm really embarrassed about or struggling with right now. Could you help me? And making a game plan for when it does come up is helpful.
That's good.
I would just add too, Alex is amazing at making me feel like the best woman in the room, the prettiest woman in the room. Even if I'm not feeling like it, he always speaks to who he knows me to be. And so that's one of the ways I feel like you help me with my insecurities.
That's good. Oh, it's so cute. Okay, question for the maybe younger marrieds in the room who don't have children yet and are debating, are we ready? Do we want kids? How do you know when you're ready? How?
Listen, I'm not
Alex is ready.
I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you should wait. Kids are no joke. They're a blessing from God, but they come with responsibilities. I am so grateful that my wife and I decided to wait. And, our beautiful daughter, Layla, is 17 years old. We had been together for 9.5 years. We got to travel and do some fun things and have lots of sex and all the things, and then it was like, okay, we're ready for you, and I am so glad that we waited, because if we had started a family, I don't know about you, but for us, we were not ready to raise some kids, because kids are amazing. They're beautiful. Yes, that's it.
I'll bring a different perspective in. That's
You don't agree with me? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think everyone has their own journey, and we were very young having kids. We waited 5 years into marriage. Speaking of unity, because I wanted kids like the night of the wedding, and he was like, so we waited, and it was actually a very painful process for me. Speaking of like dying to things to myself and waiting for him, so we waited 5 years. But that being said, I think it's sometimes. There's no such thing as being ready. And in fact, if the goal is to teach them alongside you, then you're always ready. Because for us, we didn't want to bring them into this like perfectly manicured world, because that's not the world. And so we're like, we're going to bring them in, and we're going to show them like these are the hard things, and we're learning this together. And so having that kind of family team perspective has been really helpful and very freeing for us.
Yeah, I liken it to skydiving, because you can only check your parachute so many times. So yeah, sure, definitely be ready as far as being responsible. If your job situation is completely unstable, those kinds of basic logistics, be responsible for sure. But you can only feel so ready. And if you've checked your parachute 100 times, but you're not jumping out, then at some point you got to just be like, all right, I think I'm ready. And that was me, honestly. It took me a while to get there. And when I jumped, it is worth it. Yeah.
We had really good advice from friends and counselors that's like, once you have kids, keep in mind, you can't give them back. Sorry. It doesn't work that way. There is no customer service for that. But yeah, so once you have kids, just always keep in mind, like, from now on, they'll be with you. Right? So we had to remember that, and then so we really enjoyed our 3 years when it was just us, and when we were ready to just have our family full and our home full for our family full for our entire lives. That's when we made that decision. We just both had a peace about it. Yeah.
I want to add one thing to this too, because many of you guys know our story, that we had a surprise pregnancy 3 months into, right after we got married. We're like, oh, okay, here we go. But it is true, I would agree, like, I don't think you're ever ready. And I think there's a lot of pressure on couples, especially now with social media, to like curate this perfect childhood and have all these experiences and all this whatever. And that is not reality. And so I would also say, like, finding the balance of, you need to be, as a couple, good and healthy and stable. If you're really like, there's a lot going on, you work on yourselves first, but also break off the pressure that you have to have it all together and this picket fence and all the things. Like, we were as poor as we could be, and throw the baby on, the sling or whatever, and we were just doing the thing, planting a church. Like, I mean, it was insane. But they came out okay. Like, so I would just say, there really is no right answer. There is no right answer, but God's going to give you grace either way. So it's more about seeking him, about timing. Okay. You guys submitted so many good questions. We're only going to be able to take one more. So if you didn't get it answered, feel free to email the office. We'll try our best. Like, I know that there's one. If there's like a question you had specific for somebody up here, find them after. They'll be happy to answer it for you. Last question. What does it look like to be connected to God as a couple? What does that look like? You have separate relationships with God. What does it look like to really pursue God together?
I mean, it's some of the practicals until all those deep feelings follow. So we go to church every Sunday together. We worship together. We've been challenging ourselves to pray out loud together and to really check in. It's like that question I had asked Joy earlier was like, what is God doing in your heart? And letting each other into the individual journeys that we have with the Lord is sharing those, what God is doing. And that's actually a very vulnerable place to be. But it has been really helpful for us.
Yeah, we're all different. For me, it means praying constantly. I'm someone who, I don't know about you, but I can't spend more than 5 minutes in prayer. But you best believe that I don't go more than an hour without talking to God and praying to Him and asking Him inviting Him to be a part of my family, of my life, and just really keeping our faith well. Oftentimes we wait for the storm to come so we can start praying and start developing a faith. Don't do that. Yeah. Life is going to happen. Most of us have either come out of a difficult season or going through one or about to step into one. So let's just, you got to keep that going. So prayer is really, really important. And I know that I feel that privilege to be able to lead my family in prayer. So that's something that I do all the time. We all do that. It's like, hey, we're not going to get in this car without praying. We're going to thank God. Oh my God, look at that. Let's pray for that. Let's pray for this. There's always opportunities to pray. So that's it.
I'll quickly say. Also find ways to serve together. That's one of the ways we stay connected to God. We've done full-time ministry together for probably 20 years. And then when we started Reach Up, Reach Out, one of the pluses was that we were going to get to continue to serve others through the ministry. So I would say whether that's serving here at Expression58 or, leading a connect group, whatever it is, find ways to serve together. And that way you're connecting with God doing that as well.
I would say just for us, I remember we talked to a lot of being in young adult ministry for a long time. A lot of couples, dating couples, they would always say, oh yeah, when you get married, I'm going to always have devotion with my husband or devotion with my wife. And they're like, how often do you guys do devotion? We're like, never, probably. I don't know. We just have our own individual relationships with God. And then when we come together, we share what God's speaking to us and doing in us. And that, to me, is also creating an intimacy where we're sharing what's going on in each other's hearts. And that really brings us together. To me, the connection you can have with someone through that is probably one of the deepest connections you can have. And I'll say this as well, though, about it is I'm not in her life to make sure she's loving God the way she's supposed to. And she's not in my life to make sure, you better be spending time with Jesus, Now, if I'm acting like a fool, then yes, she might want to say that to me. Because you need some time with God because you're not acting right now. But for the most part, I remember when something that broke something in me right before we got married was the Lord spoke to me and said, for me, He said, it's up to you, Ryan, how far you want to go in your relationship with me, and it's up to Jackie how far she wants to go in her relationship with me. So for me, it's up to me how far I want to go, and for her, it's up to her how far she wants to go. And He's like, and then you can come together as well, pray for one another, love one another. Yes, you can pray, you can do devotion together, but ultimately for the call that's on my life, for the call that's on her life, we want to be supportive of those things towards one another. But it's up to me the depth of my relationship with God. I'm not trying to make her have a relationship with Jesus, and hers may not even look anything like mine. We talked about that all the time where my relationship with God looks different than hers does. And that's okay. I'm not trying to make her just look like me in her relationship with Jesus.
So good. Guys, has this been helpful? Can we give it up for our amazing panelists? Thank you guys for sharing. Really, really grateful. You know, I don't know that anybody was like, oh, I'm so excited. They're all like, what? It takes a lot of vulnerability and courage just to let us in to this. And so we're really, really grateful. Couple of things. One, How We Love. Great book. Get it off Amazon. Number two, I want to remind you, all the married couples, listen, you don't get opportunities like this, okay? We have a phenomenal 9-week course starting this week. Am I right? What date are the 12th. The 12th. My birthday. Feel free to send me love. A 9-week course starting, which we're going to learn tools. This is a phenomenal program. They're going to take us through Marriage Strong. And it's basically, like I said before, it's like getting 9 weeks of legitimate professional counseling. This is incredible. It's you know, you guys met Jeff and Jacqueline a few weeks ago, but marriage family therapists, and they're going to really walk us through just tools. So childcare is provided. We are investing in our marriages here, in our community. Make this a priority. Share it with a friend. Bring somebody along with you. This is gonna be great. So, want to encourage you to join us for that. Also, our prayer team is going to be available at the end, down in the front, just to pray for folks for whatever you need. And you guys, thank you for being gracious. We went really long. These panels are long, but they're so good and worth it. So thank you so much for being gracious. Once again, please hug your children's workers. They have been back there a long time. Have an amazing week, and we'll see you again next week.